He wrote it in 1882. 3 words that shook the foundations of Western civilization. God is dead. Philosophers panicked. Priests denounced him. Governments banned his books. Ordinary people called him a madman. And Friedrich Nietzsche, sitting alone in a rented room in Turin, half-blind, racked with migraines, writing by candlelight, watched the world misunderstand him completely. Because those 3 words were not a celebration. They were not an atheist battle cry. They were not an invitation to abandon morality. They were a warning. The most urgent warning any philosopher has ever issued. And 140 years later, we are still living inside it.
Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche
was born in 1844 in a small Prussian town called Rocken. His father was a Lutheran pastor. His childhood was devout, quiet, and bookish. He was so gifted academically that at 24, before he had even finished his PhD, he was appointed professor of classical philology at the University of Basel, the youngest professor in the university's history. He was brilliant. He was also, from the very beginning, deeply constitutionally uncomfortable with the world as it was. He looked at European society, its religion, its morality, its culture, its politics, and saw something that disturbed him profoundly. He saw a civilization that had built everything it valued, its ethics, its meaning, its purpose, its hope, on a single foundation: God. And he saw that foundation beginning to crack. The 19th century was the century that shook Christianity to its roots. Darwin had published On the Origin of Species. Science was offering explanations for creation that did not require a creator. Biblical scholarship was questioning the literal truth of sacred texts. Industrialization was pulling people away from churches and into factories. Across Europe, educated people were quietly losing their faith. Not loudly, not dramatically, just slowly walking away. Nietzsche saw this happening, and it terrified him. Not because he believed in God himself. He did not. But because he understood what the death of God would mean for a civilization that had built everything on that belief.
If God is dead, where does morality come from? If there is no divine law, what stops human beings? If God is dead, where does morality come from? What is the point of suffering?
These were not comfortable questions, and Nietzsche did not offer comfortable answers. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. Notice what he says. Not God never existed. Not God has been disproven. We have killed him. We human beings, through our science, our rationalism, our growing refusal to believe, have made God impossible. And then he asks the question that no one else was asking. Is there enough water to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods, simply to appear worthy of it? This is not a man celebrating the death of God. This is a man standing over a grave, horrified at what he has found there, and asking what comes next. That was Nietzsche's real question. Not is God dead, but now what? He had a diagnosis, and he had a prescription. The diagnosis was this: without God, European civilization would drift into what he called nihilism. Nihilism, the belief that nothing matters, that life has no meaning, that values are arbitrary, that morality is just power in disguise. He did not celebrate nihilism. He feared it. He called it the greatest danger facing the modern world. The most extreme form of nihilism, he wrote, would be the view that every belief, every considering something true, is necessarily false, because there simply is no true world. Look around at the modern world. The cynicism, the disengagement, the sense that nothing is real, nothing matters, every institution is corrupt, every value is performative. Nietzsche predicted this in 1882. So what was his prescription? He called it the Übermensch, usually translated as Superman, but more accurately, the Overman. The person who creates their own values. Not because they are above the law, not because they are free from responsibility, but because they refuse to inherit values they have not examined. They refuse to live by rules, handed down by a God they no longer believe in, or a society they have not consented to. They examine their own life. They decide what matters. They create meaning, not because the universe provides it, but because they are strong enough to provide it themselves. This is the most demanding philosophy ever proposed. It requires complete honesty, complete courage, complete willingness to stare into the void and choose anyway.
But the ideas survived. Because ideas, as Nietzsche knew better than anyone, do not die with their creator. The will to power. This is not, as it was later misused, a desire to dominate others.
For Nietzsche, the will to power was the fundamental drive. In every living thing, the drive to grow, to overcome, to become more than you currently are. Not power over others, power over yourself. The athlete who pushes past exhaustion, the artist who refuses to produce mediocre work, the thinker who dismantles their own certainties in pursuit of deeper truth. This is the will to power. It is, in essence, the will to excellence. The second, eternal recurrence. Nietzsche asked a simple question. If you had to live your life again, exactly as you have lived it, every joy, every pain, every triumph, every humiliation, every ordinary Tuesday, every moment of crushing boredom, again and again, infinitely, could you say yes? Not could you tolerate it? Could you will it? Could you love it? This was his test for a life well lived. Not, have you been happy? Not, have you been successful? Not, have you been good? But, have you lived so fully, so honestly, so completely in alignment with your own values, that you would choose this life again, if given the chance? In January 1889, in Turin, Nietzsche saw a horse being whipped. In the street, he threw his arms around the horse's neck, weeping, and then he collapsed. He never recovered. For the remaining 11 years of his life, he was mentally incapacitated, unable to write, unable to think clearly, cared for by his mother and then his sister. His sister, Elizabeth Forster Nietzsche, then did something unforgivable. She edited his unpublished notes. She rearranged his ideas. She presented a distorted version of his philosophy to the world, one that conveniently supported her own nationalist anti-Semitic views. Nietzsche himself had written explicit, passionate denunciations of anti-Semitism. He despised German nationalism. He called himself a good European, not a German. He ended his friendship with Richard Wagner, specifically because of Wagner's anti-Semitism. None of this stopped his sister from handing his legacy to the people he would have hated most. And so the man who asked, "What comes after God?" became, in popular mythology, the philosopher of the Nazis. The most grotesque misreading in the history of philosophy. What Nietzsche actually believed was almost exactly the opposite. He believed in the individual over the collective, in creativity over conformity, in honest self-examination over comfortable inherited belief, in the courage to create meaning in a universe that offers none.
He was not a pessimist. He was the most demanding kind of optimist, one who refuses to pretend that meaning is given to us, one who insists that we must earn it. "Become who you are," he wrote. "Not who your examined religion tells you to be, tested, chosen, actually are."
Friedrich Nietzsche died in 1900. He was 55 years old. He had spent his last decade in silence, unable to speak the ideas, still burning inside him. But the ideas survived. Because ideas, as Nietzsche knew better than anyone, do not die with their creator. God is dead, he said. And what he meant was, the age of inherited meaning is over. The age of examined meaning has begun. You must create it. You must examine it. You must live it so completely, so honestly, that you would choose it again. That is what Nietzsche actually meant. And it is the most demanding, most honest, most human philosophy anyone has ever proposed. Subscribe to The Examined Lives. Next week, the man who built the greatest empire the ancient world had ever seen, and then, at the height of his power, walked away from all of it. Ashoka, the emperor who chose compassion over conquest. See you then.